Hey guys, it's Elena. I'm back with another tutorial of how to use my alcohol ink brushes for Procreate. And I'm starting out with the ink pool edger this time. I wanted to go for something very minimal on a bigger canvas this time because I had been asked about that. So this canvas is actually 4,000 by 6,500 pixels. So I'm just adding some ink in different colors, and now I'm using the hairdryer brush to blow the ink outwards in smaller and smaller amounts and with less pressure each time to mimic how it would look blowing it outward with a hair dryer. And I'm starting out in different colors, and you'll notice that the color I start out in is also the color that is being smeared outward. So now I'm going to go ahead and use the heat gun brush to add some ripples. You know how I like the ripples. And this brush, you can just use it in sort of a circular motion like this in order to get some ripples. And just like with the hairdryer brush, this one will take the pixels from wherever you start, and it'll take the color from that, and then it will smear it out. So you can get some different looks depending on where you start out. And the undo button is always your friend. If you don't like how it looks, you can just go back. And that's actually something nice about digital alcohol ink as opposed to real alcohol ink, because you just have to sort of make do and keep putting more ink and more blender down if you mess up. But you can just undo if you don't like it. So now this is one of the main things I really wanted to show in this tutorial. I'm using the blender brush that's called Heavy Bleed Blender, and I'm blending inward on some of these areas where I've used the hairdryer so that only the edges on the sides remain. And I wanted to try out this look because this is something that you will frequently see with alcohol ink. As you are blowing it outwards, you'll get some hard edges on the sides, but then sort of a slow fade in the middle. So that's something I really wanted to try out, and I'm happy about the way that it looks. And the reason I'm using the blender brush instead of just an eraser is because I don't want to completely get rid of the color. I'm just sort of fading it outward, but I'm not getting completely rid of it. So I'm just sort of like, you'll see there's some little smears that remain. So that makes it a bit more realistic, like real alcohol ink. And I'm also doing that same technique on some of the edges where I've used the heat gun, where the ripples are, because those can come out really clean, and maybe you want that, but if you don't, it can be a little bit more realistic if you sort of fade out some of the edges just a little bit. So alcohol ink can be, it's really a mix of hard edges and soft edges. So I'm just taking the blender brush, and like anything that looks a little bit harsh or a little bit, you know, like it was made digitally, I'm just kind of going over it to add a little bit of an organic smear on some of these areas. And just dragging the ink sort of outward or inward. And the beauty of this sort of media is that you really have the freedom to make it look however you want to. So I'm doing this the way that looks good to me, but it might be that you have a completely different idea of how much soft and how much hard you want it to be, where you want to blend or not blend. So I'm just kind of showing you what I think looks good, but obviously you are the boss and you do it however looks good to you. But the brush that I am using right now is called Negative Space Ring Blender, and I'm just sort of doing a little whirly with it on the side of some of these areas to make it look like I've dropped a bit of isopropyl alcohol or blending solution on the edge to make it go inward. And I like how it looks with some of these edges are kind of rough looking, though especially the ones from the hairdryer, and then some of them are very soft and round. I like having both of those in there. So now I'm using the spray blender brush, and you'll notice that I'm usually using it, the tip of the pencil comes down where there's white on the canvas. So in between the the areas where there's paint, there's ink. And I just like how it looks like it's splattered up onto the ink that way. And so now I'm using the white splatter brush just to add some bigger circles on there kind of randomly, as if I'd been splattering the ink down in those areas. So now, of course, I'm using the metallic ink splatter brush in my favorite gold. And as I've said in other tutorials, this here it's very addictive. You can add the ink, you can add the metallic wherever you want to, but I really like to add it to edges. So any of these edges that I've created with the hairdryer brush or with the heat gun brush, there tends to be a lot of edges in the alcohol ink, and you can sort of bring some interest to those edges by adding this gold, and that is naturally where the gold would sort of fall. I wasn't really sure about adding it over top of this orange color. I ended up going ahead and doing it. But I noticed that the metallic splatter looks really good over top of the areas where I've used the splatter brush as well. So it can look really, I just have a really nice, neat texture right there. And I like to trace along the edges I've done with the hairdryer and with the heat gun. Just adding the metallic in little areas, and you can also, you don't have to add it all over like this. You can just add it to one area if that's what you prefer. But anyway, this was just a quick little tutorial to show you how to do this sort of negative space technique in a different way, and I hope that you liked it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.